How's it going, Lisa? Bruce is Bobby Sixkilla, and welcome back to Choices That Matter. And the sun went out. It is story time once more. Victor Santiago is no more. He's dead. And we're sailing away from Italy, heading to Turkey now by ship. Actually, we're in Sicily at the moment, I believe. Follow her lead. It seemed to take forever, but at last we were back on board and ready to set sail. It was oddly comforting to be on familiar ground, even though it wasn't ground at all. Sharon and I were useless on deck, which was a relief. I went to my quarters and lay on my bunk bed. I hadn't meant to sleep, but I did, and was awoken by gunfire. Terrified of some new disaster, I ran on deck. We were under attack. The men from Sicily were firing at our hull, aiming to take out the engine. Francine spotted me and tossed one of her spare pistols right at me. I caught it, but I wasn't sure if I was willing to fire on the other ship. Avast, get lost, you're outgunned. I looked where Francine and her sisters were shooting and spotted several bullet holes in the flank of the opposite ship. Hoping I wasn't making the wrong decision, I focused on the scatter pattern of bullet holes and added my own. I was rewarded by a rain of bullets on our own hull and threw myself into the deck. Nice shooting, Francine shouted. Keep it up. Before the bullets pierced the ship and killed me. What a stupid way to die. I crawled into a better position, listening carefully in an attempt to figure out how the gunfight was going. The noise was lessening. The other ship was fleeing. In a few moments, the fight was over and Francine came to retrieve her weapon. I handed it over gladly. She was flushed with pleasure and shaking with excitement of the fight. I stepped backwards automatically, not knowing if she'd committed murder to keep her ship. Would you look at that, she said, pointing at my wrist. Is that a Moticon device? The company gave it to me. I'm using it to investigate the sun outages. She thought for a moment, then said, in that case, keep it. With that, she left to inspect the ship for damage. Sharon stirred. What are you doing in here? I collapsed onto her chair, an armchair with fixed cushions that was bolted to the floor. You just slept through a gun battle, I said. What, she said? No fair. Sharon yawned. So are we there yet? Turkey, here we come. Actually, no, said Sharon. I'm not sticking around. Oh? I said, feeling like a presumptuous jerk. I'm sorry, is there someone else you want to go? Or where you think I should be? Or both? It's Chrissy, she said heavily. When I was on stage, I already knew the sun would probably come back once more and then disappear again. She's scared of the dark, and I'm scared for her, poor possum. I have to go and see for myself that she's alright. I've been so thoughtless, I said. She patted my arm. You've been focused. It's a good thing, at the moment. You keep doing your thing, and who knows, perhaps we'll meet again sooner than you think. It wasn't easy getting all the way to Peru from here, I said, wishing there was something useful I could do. There's a lot of demand for flights, she said. They'll rejig things so that they can keep going without all the missing satellites. I bet they're already flying a little bit. Give Chrissy a hug for me. I bit my lip. Moti was becoming a better person than I was, and I was a little bit jealous along with the pride. Moti saw things differently to me somehow. The amount of empathy Moti commanded was very admirable. Whoever made the Moticons must be a genius to create something kinder than actual people. That's not hard. People are jerks generally. Not you lot, of course. You lot are wonderful. But most people are jerks. Take Chrissy's family and find a safe, warm place to stay away from cities. We should probably do that. I knew you'd understand, she said. May I talk to Moti? Of course. She took my hand and turned it over so she could speak directly to Moti. Look after teacher, okay? And yourself too. I'll miss both of you. I'll miss you too. Sharon straightened up and hugged me. I know it's hypocritical of me, but stay out of trouble. I'll do my best, I promised, and I intend to keep Moti safe too. Arc 9 completed. Only 17%. Took the fight to Victor and will be looking for Etienne in Turkey. Alright, Arc 10. Our pirate associates dropped Sharon off at the far southern coast of Italy, and we travelled on without her. The first hop is likely to be the hardest, Captain Francine advised us. That is, the sea gap between Italy and Greece. I'm tempted to take us up around Venice and Croatia and so forth, but not quite tempted enough to spend all that extra time at sea, so we'll hold our breath and skip across. Do I get a vote in this, I asked? Carmine, the younger sister, snorted derisively. I don't, so you certainly won't. We stopped at Otranto to thoroughly check and refuel the boat, then waited until the sun was high in the sky before setting off across the water. The sunlit water smelt deliciously of salt, but there was a hint of rot in the air. A lot of animals had died lately due to their own berserk behaviour since the first sun outage. Earth would never be the same. Stay on deck, will you? Carmine asked me. Even a landlubber can see danger coming and shout a warning. Daydream bowl, Moti keeps watch. When we were safely across the strait and hugged the Albanian coast, the mood visibly calmed. Some seagulls attempted to get into our galley, but that was more hazardous to the deck than to us. How is Albania these days? I asked Carmine. Is it burned out? Revolting? Dealing with total infrastructure collapse? She shrugged one shoulder elegantly. It's better than Italy was last week. We sailed south past Greece, hopping from island to island, where any large sea creatures were likely to beach themselves before doing us any great harm. It was clear that the animals of the world were continuing to behave oddly. We saw a group of polar bears on a sandy shore looking as self-conscious as a cat caught falling over. Our ship remained safe, and we quickly grew bored. Carmine challenged me to an all-day game of poker. Sure, whatever. As long as I don't have to bet. She produced a battered pack of cards that I inspected closely before agreeing to play. Why is Moti crying over there? After a few rounds, I realized Moti was unable to use subtle vibrations to advise me on my actions. I paid attention and eventually earned over €1,000. When we were alone, Moti informed me that the cards were not deliberately marked, but someone who had owned the cards could quickly memorize every fold and flaw in the pack and win all their games that way. Not today, I said with a smile. You have quite the poker face, Moti. We made our slow way from Greek islands to the Turkish, and then sailed along the Turkish coast until we reached Antalya, where we parted ways. I felt oddly upset to be leaving the pirate sisters behind, but that was probably just the romance of the sea. Antalya would have been pleasant if my sea legs didn't insist that it was rocking gently back and forth. I managed to walk inland a little, and spotted a hotel. I wish I knew how Etienne planned for us to find one another in a nation of 75 million people. Book a single room. We don't have Etienne with us. The hotel's receptionist didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak any Turkish. But we worked out the basics soon enough. For some reason, he took away my towels. It seemed I hadn't communicated as well as I'd thought. I wasn't concerned until I remembered that I left every scrap of fabric I wasn't wearing at the laundromat next door. I had a glass of cold water that sat strangely in my stomach, and sat down to wait for the room to stop moving up and down. It didn't oblige, so I turned on the TV. Only one channel was working. I watched a Turkish soap opera with increasing astonishment. But why did the monkey steal the Queen's red shoes in the first place? Eventually my existence crossed over the subtle threshold between fantastical television and bizarre dreams. I dreamt of a boy crying and crying, with a single owl feather clutched in his hand. He was sobbing words, but they weren't in English. He was crying so hard, I couldn't have understood him anyway. No one could. When the boy finally threw the feather to the ground, the owl appeared. It was as big as he was, and the boy hugged it and stopped crying. The owl hooted softly and rearranged its feather with elaborate care. Then it flew away. The boy was all alone again. I woke up with tears streaming down my face. Teacher, why are you crying? Tell Moti the dream. Do you think someone was trying to communicate with you? What? I said, rubbing my face. Felt like I hadn't slept at all. No, that never occurred to me. I made myself get up and wash my face, which I then dried on my shirt since I didn't have a single towel. You do that anyway. The visitor information folder was mainly in Turkish, with a few sections of utterly incomprehensible English. I had Moti run it back and forth through online translators a few times, but it only got worse. That was probably the method the original interpreter had used. Ultimately, I followed my nose to the breakfast bar, offered money to a woman standing at the entrance, and went inside to eat. I wasn't sure if the woman was a hotel worker, a snappy dresser, or an expert con artist. I also didn't know if the cost of breakfast was meant to be included in my room fee, in which case I'd just given her an enormous tip, or a bribe. The food was good, by turns salty, sweet, and sharp. I was so ignorant of Turkish cuisine I didn't recognise several dishes. Moti begged me to try them all, and for the most part I was glad I did. The spicy sausage was especially good. My only disappointment was the only bread was British-style bread rolls. I'd been hoping for Turkish bread, for obvious reasons. Oh well, surely I'd have some before I left Turkey. I found a new person at the desk who spoke enough English to understand that I wished for my towels to return to my room. Feeling triumphant, I visited the gift shop and found some Turkish delight. Teacher, those have almost no nutritional value whatsoever. No. Vital cultural experience. I love Turkish delight. No one's going to come between me and my Turkish delight. I enjoyed a passionate and convoluted argument with Moti about the relative merits of keeping away from sweets, but I won in the sense that I ate the Turkish delight anyway. Sounds like a win to me. Back in my room, I still had no towels, but I did have an enormous stack of Turkish newspapers. How on earth had I asked for newspapers when I couldn't even get towels? I decided to let myself air dry and to rinse out my clothes in the shower as well. I showered and wrapped myself in a bedsheet, surprised at the amount of salt that had collected and dried on my skin during the sea voyage. When I tried to turn on the TV again, 2 channels were available, and one of them was the news. I watched for a while and Moti translated some tales of local political scandals, heartfelt speeches by teenage pop stars, and a local competition about who made the best goat's cheese. After a while, it was amazingly calming. Moti lowered its volume and then stopped translating. Images of sunlight, military parades, and sports contests washed over me, along with an unintelligible finance report and scenes of a weather reporter standing neck deep in a dripping snowdrift. I smiled serenely at the sound of chanting before realizing it was real-life chanting, coming from outside the window. In an instant, I was thrown back to the constant paranoia of Santiago's Italy. My heart pounded and I ran to the window. Do not be afraid, teacher. There is a local election for mayor here tomorrow. No one plans to harm you. Thank you, Moti, I said, but my heart was still beating a mile a minute. Moments later, I realized what Etienne would do to help me find him. He'd go to a famous city. Istanbul had 14 million people, but that was still better than Turkey's 75 million. Time to check out, I told Moti. We're off to Istanbul. Call Etienne, I guess. We'll try. Moti was unable to connect to Etienne, but assured me that he would keep trying. Hey, I said, realizing something I should have noticed earlier. Next time I'm attempting to actually get inside after several days of travel, can you please go ahead and translate for me? Okay, teacher. You must admit, it was fun. I admit no such thing, I said, dressing my damp and smelly clothes. I answered a knock at the door and made Moti ask the woman for towels. That would have worked a treat, except she was a local print journalist looking for a human interest story. The sketchy internet was having an energizing effect on the print media. She didn't have any towels, and I didn't have any comments. I said a firm goodbye, accepted her business card, and went to check myself out. Once I paid for a room, I picked up my clothes from the laundromat, and it was time to move on. Oh, we're going to take a train. Moti asked for directions in Turkish, then directed me to the train station. I paid for a ticket and stepped on board, saying, Istanbul? To anyone that looked kind enough not to object to my disheveled appearance. Several people said, Istanbul, back to me, so I figured I was on the right track. Probably even the right train. I wondered if Moti's sense of humour would stretch to that and decided not to risk it. Yeah. Haha, you're on the wrong train. I just didn't want to tell you because I thought it would be hilarious. The train stayed in the station for some hours, and I grew increasingly anxious that I'd misunderstood everything. Moti wouldn't deliberately lead me astray, right? Eventually the train was full, and a ticket collector came through taking everyone's receipts before we left. I surrendered my ticket and hoped desperately that he wasn't a fake. No one else seemed concerned, so I told myself I was being paranoid again. We'll keep the luggage on our lap. I twiddled my thumbs for several more minutes and then was delighted for the chance to continue twiddling my thumbs, but this time with great views. The train pulled out of the station and we were off. The city was packed with a glorious array of architectural styles, from modern to 1st century Muslim to Gothic and neoclassical. I drank it in. Moti made an excellent tour guide despite never having been to Turkey before. It was Moti that told me that when we were passing a particularly interesting building, and I snapped pictures and asked questions as if I were a tourist. Sadly, that state of affairs couldn't last. Moti fell silent, and I fell asleep. I awoke in a panic, not knowing which Turkish city was around me. Or had we already crossed the land bridge to Europe? Moti, where are we? I have received no word from Etienne in the last 40 minutes, teacher. This is our 3rd stop inside Antalya. Oh, I said, with dawning horror. How many stops are there altogether? There are 27 more train stops between here and central Istanbul. The journey will take a long time. I recommend you relax. Thank you, Moti, I said absently. I watched the city of Antalya thin out and disappear, and I wondered aloud if I should say goodbye or apologise for not bothering to stay longer. Both, if that's what you feel is right to do. Okay, Moti, I will. Goodbye, Antalya, I said quietly. I'm sorry I wasn't able to take the time to get to know you better. Goodbye, Antalya. I felt foolish, but Moti seemed genuinely upset. Moti, saying goodbye was just a silly, superstitious thing to do. Don't be sad about it. The city doesn't have any consciousness to let it feel sad or lonely. Are you making a joke, teacher? No, I said I was just stating a fact. The city of Antalya is large and vibrant. Of course it has an echo. Moti, I said slowly, I don't understand what you're talking about. Please can you explain what you mean by an echo? Do you want me to teach you? I laughed. Yes, Moti, that's exactly what I want. Reality is more complicated than you can see or touch. There is another plane of existence, which is just as important as the physical plane. On that plane, souls exist just as they do here. Sometimes they look different, like the owls. The owls look like fireflies to you. Are you sure you do not already know this, teacher? I rubbed my forehead trying to take it in. It sounded like nonsense except that I'd seen the owls for myself. So everything has a soul. People, owls, whole cities? Not everything. People, owls, stars, a lot of things. What else do you know that you haven't told me? I do not know. You're still the teacher. Huh, I said. Well, thanks, Moti. Our train was pulling into yet another stop. We were finally on the outskirts of Antalya, and the last houses were giving way to fields. The overwhelming colour of the fields was brown. I had a bad feeling that agriculture around the world would take years to recover from 3 weeks without sunlight. There was a kerfuffle on the platform and a woman was restrained by security as she tried to board our train without a ticket. As we pulled away, she stopped struggling and went limp, allowing the station guards to set her back on her feet and let her go. Moments later, she bolted away. Moti, did you see why that woman was acting so strangely? Her son broke away from her and stowed away on our train. She was unable to follow him and the guards misunderstood her intentions. There's a lost boy on this train, I repeated, incredulous. Yes, teacher. Is he old enough to look after himself, I asked, twisting around to look at the other passengers in my carriage. I estimate his age as 12 years. He is short and slender for his age with a broken arm. I suspect he is much more capable than the average 12-year-old. Oh, we better look for him. At that moment, a skinny boy with silky black hair and large eyes stumbled into our carriage. He stopped and lifted his hands to the sky. Moti, I found you, he cried in perfect, joyful English. Hello, Master Umi. I turned to look at my motorcon, and then back at Umi. Umi, are you that Egyptian boy? Umi didn't say a word, but clung to Moti on my wrist. Moti, what's going on, I asked. And how do we get Umi back to his mother? The next station is 20 minutes away. Perhaps Master Umi's mother will wait for us there. Why do you call him Master, Moti? I asked. What do you mean, teacher? You call everyone else Mister. Why do you refer to Umi as Master? Because he's a kid? It is in my protocols. What protocols? I do not understand your question. Please phrase it differently. I sighed. I wish Professor Sol was still around. He understood Moti a lot more than I did. Have you met my friend... Umi, have you met my friend Etienne? He was looking for you. Once again, the boy didn't speak. He looked at me and smiled. I knew he'd heard me and was simply choosing not to talk. We are not going to leave Master Umi now that we've found each other, are we? I hope not, I said, wondering what I'd just gotten myself into. We were drawing close to the next station, so I moved to gather my luggage, not sure what would happen next. It was difficult to negotiate the aisles of the train with Umi clinging to my wrist. He had drawn attention to Moti, and several people on the train were looking at my moticon device with frank interest. If they knew Moti's genius for maintaining some communications and connectivity despite the global problems with satellites and cables, they'd be even more covetous. We made it to the door eventually, and I spotted Umi's mother on the platform as we pulled in. She was panting from what must have been a frantic taxi journey, and was anxiously waiting, twisting a ring on her finger. It wasn't a wedding ring, and she and Umi did not look alike, so I guess she had adopted it? As soon as the doors opened, I rushed outside, calling out, "Umi's here, he's safe." She ran to us and embraced her son, bursting into tears. "I'm sorry, Mama," said Umi. She took a shuddering breath. "Oh, thank you for talking to me, Umi. I love to hear your voice." Umi still hadn't let go of my wrist. Her mother registered my presence for the first time and tried to push Umi behind her. "Who are you? What do you want with my son?" she snarled. "Explain that you're trying to understand the sun outage problem." "I think Umi can help me solve the sun outage problem," I said. The child's face crumpled in terror and he fled, riding to the other end of the platform. His mother shot a glare at me and ran after him. I sat back on my heels, wondering what I'd said wrong. I opened my mouth to ask Moti what was going on and realized my wrist was bare. Moti was gone. "We better chase him down." I yelled, but no one responded. Of course not, my translator was on the other end of the platform. I stood and watched Umi from the corner of my eye as his mother caught him and comforted him. The whistle blew for the train to depart, and I was careful not to react at all, since it would only put more pressure on Umi's mother. My train left without me, and Umi still hadn't given Moti back to me. At last, his mother brought him back and told him firmly that stealing was wrong. He passed back my device, and I strapped Moti to my wrist once more, feeling sick that I'd lost Moti so easily. "I'm Penny," said the woman, "Umi's mother." She gave a little shrug. "And yes, I'm British. Umi and I are going back to my home, but travel is a little tricky at the moment." "No kidding," I said, trying hard to put her at ease. She noticed the empty tracks as if for the first time. "Oh, did you miss your train?" "I'll catch the next one." She looked at me for a moment, twisting the ring on her finger. "Let's get a coffee in the station house," she said at last. "There's clearly something odd going on between you, Umi, and your watch." I knelt to address Umi. "Is it alright if we have a snack with you? I'm not going to hurt you and your mother will be with us." He looked at me but didn't answer. Tears shone in his eyes. "Moti will come too, of course," I said. "Won't you, Moti?" "It is alright, Master Umi. I'll be right next to you." At that, he dropped his head in a nod. Try to engage him in conversation? The child listened to me but didn't say a word. "Don't worry about his silence," said Penny. "It's extremely rare for him to speak at all, even to me." What a strange child. I ordered for all of us and tried to watch Umi without him noticing. The Turkish coffee was incredibly strong, so strong it was actually gritty. Penny watched in fascination as I described it to Moti. "Since when does a watch want to know what food tastes like?" she asked. "I am not a watch. I am Moti." "It's true," I said. "Traveling with Moti isn't like traveling alone." "Moti is like me," Umi said quietly. Penny and I exchanged startled glances. "What do you mean, Umi?" she asked. He looked at her and just smiled. We both know that she is still sad. "She?" The child laughed at me as if I was asking the question as a joke. "I really don't know what's going on," I said, struggling to control my frustration. "Please, will one of you explain things to me?" Umi turned away, leaving Moti to answer. Umi and I understand each other, just as we understand the sadness that is causing the sun to disappear. My eyes widened as I struggled to keep my voice steady. "How do we fix it?" "No, please do not ask that question." "Why not?" I asked. "Millions of people will die unless someone figures out the answer." Umi's large eyes widened as he crept under the table, sobbing hysterically. Penny slid from her chair and embraced him. I heard his muffled voice saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." "Teacher, how could you?" "I don't understand. What have I done?" Penny looked at me from where she comforted her son under the table. "Get away from Umi, now." "Moti," sobbed the boy. Moti stays with me, I said, feeling like the worst human in the world, but we'll be just outside if you want to tell me what I did wrong. I dropped some money on the table, doubting very much it was even acceptable currency in Turkey, and hurried outside. Well, Moti, I said at last, you knew I shouldn't ask Umi about the sun. How did you know? And how can I find out what he knows if I can't say anything to him? Master Umi is afraid because he believes he is worthy. What on earth do you mean by worthy, I asked. It means the right kind of sacrifice. What do you mean, the right kind of sacrifice, I asked. You heard what Mr. Jonathan said before he died. I closed my eyes, wishing I hadn't been there to witness his murder. Remind me. Mr. Jonathan said, I'm not worthy, I'm not willing. This is not a sacrifice. Then he said, the sun will return, but not today. Not like this. I bowed my head, remembering Jonathan's terror and his sudden passion. My interpretation is that in order for the sun to recover fully, we need a sacrifice who is both willing and worthy. What does worthy even mean, I asked. I do not know, teacher, but Master Umi believes he is. That child is not going to become a human sacrifice. I agree, teacher. Master Umi will not be allowed to become the sacrifice. I looked through the window and saw Umi sitting at the cafe table once more. His face was strained with tears, but he was no longer crying in terror. Penny caught my glance and nodded permission to return. I went to the boy at once, ignoring the way his mother held onto him more tightly in an unconscious fear reaction. Moti explained everything, I told the boy. I understand your fear, but it is not your job to save us. That task belongs to someone, but not to you. I promise. Not you. Do you understand? I could tell he wanted to believe me, but couldn't quite let go of his instinctive fear. He nodded once, and I accepted that. I know Moti and Umi would like to stay together, I said to Penny. Would it be acceptable if I tagged along, now that I know to watch my stupid mouth? Not stupid, said Penny. I suddenly realized she looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Being Umi's mother couldn't be easy. Yes, she said, you can travel with us. Where are you headed? I have a friend waiting for me in Istanbul. Excellent, she said. We're passing through Istanbul on our way back home. My home. That is, Liverpool. With 4 of us, 3 humans, we booked a private cabin for the next leg of the train journey. Penny and I didn't say it aloud, but neither of us wanted our locations accidentally broadcast to the world through random photo or phone video uploaded to social media. We were living amongst, almost on top of each other, but we had our own minuscule bathroom which gave us some privacy. I admired Penny's devotion to Umi and her ability to stay calm under pressure. But being around someone so similar and yet so different made me crave my true friends. One evening when Penny was taking a shower and Umi was sleeping, I watched brown fields pass by out the window. Moti spoke up to let me know we had a connection to a strong phone line. My heart beat faster at once, as if I was about to dance with my high school sweetheart at prom. It was stupid to get so excited over a simple phone call that might not even work. I was desperate to talk to someone I truly cared about, and who truly cared about me. We need to get hold of Etienne, really, because that's who we're going to see, right? Hello, came Etienne's voice. It's really you? Last I checked, I said. Are you alright? You sound rough. Wish you were here, he said in a low voice. I'm in Turkey, en route to don't know where. Not sure I'm far enough from my mother yet. There wasn't any static. I'd heard right. I thought your mother was dead. So did I. Well, I suppose I knew she wasn't because the lawyers mentioned something about her after my father's death. But I didn't think I'd ever see her again. I gather the reunion didn't go well, I said. He laughed. I've missed you. I didn't say anything. Etienne was so soft-hearted. I wondered what could bring him to avoid his own remaining parent. Guess how she found me, he said. No, don't guess. You know my father well enough to believe I'm not exaggerating, but not enough to actually think of what he did. He sighed. When I was very young enough not to remember it, my father implanted a tracker underneath my skin. When I entered Egypt, it activated, and my mother used it to track me down. Wow, I said. And all these years you didn't know? They tagged me, he said, like a migrating bird. No wonder you moved to another country. He laughed at that, but he clearly wasn't alright. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. When she showed up like that, I said. Me too, he said. I'm on a train to Istanbul right now, I said. Perfect, he said. If you tell me which train, I'll be sure to meet you at the station. I may have company, I said. Umi and his mother. You found Umi, he said. How? When? Actually, never mind. Tell me everything when you get here. I will, I said, and recited the train details before hanging up. I listened to Umi's soft breaths, determined to protect him from harm. Moti, I said, do you know of anyone else who is worthy to be the sacrifice? Any adult? Not yet, teacher. Mr. Nye of Cusco was a willing sacrifice, but he was not worthy. Who's Mr. Nye? I asked. Sharon's historian friend, teacher, the one who died under the temple in Cusco. It was hard to think about a real person being killed as a blood sacrifice. It was even harder to think that a man gave his life for nothing. Penny emerged from the bathroom, fully dressed, but still rubbing her wet hair with a towel. This is the life, she said with a rueful smile. Tell her about Etienne. I've arranged for a friend of mine to meet us at Istanbul, I told her. Is that alright? She hung up her towel and twisted a ring on her finger, remaining standing by the window and unconsciously adjusting her stance for the train's rhythm. Do you trust them? With my life, I said. Literally. With Umi's life, she asked. Yes, I said without hesitation. Well, she sighed. Umi likes you. That counts for a lot. Umi mumbled in his sleep and covered his face with his hands. His mumbles turned to anguish and shouts in Arabic, and he tugged at his own hair. Shall I have Moti play peaceful music? Can't hurt, she said, and went and sat on Umi's bed, gently patting his back, as if he was an infant. He calmed momentarily, then screamed outright and sat bolt upright, smashing his head against the top bunk. His eyes were wide, looking unnaturally large in his narrow face. It took him several long moments to recognize me, although he instinctively pressed his body against Penny's side. His head was bleeding, but Penny and I didn't dare to comment on it. The sun is going out one more time, he said, in a voice still hoarse with sleep. This time, it won't come back. It's okay, Umi, Penny said gently. Someone will find a way. It'll be okay. The sun will vanish the same day as the southern hemisphere's winter solstice, he said, and then promptly lay down and went back to sleep. This time, he slept peacefully. Penny gently washed his forehead clean of blood and put a band-aid on him. Alright, we're going to wrap this one up here because we're out of time for today, but maybe we'll hit Istanbul soon. And hopefully we'll do that before the sun goes out for the last time, I guess. If it goes out another time and it's not going to come back again on its own, does that mean you can still bring it back with the sacrifice? Or no? Guess we'll find out. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for getting out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.